Thanks very much, Cahill. I had hoped to be able to speak directly to my amendments, but I don't think I'm going to have the opportunity to do that, and I do want to speak on report stage of this bill. Because, as I said at the outset in my contribution, at second stage, that we have to bring in a new piece of legislation to deal with the challenges that we have here. I didn't have the type of legislation that Minister Ryan is bringing in at the moment available to me when I was Minister. In fact, the initial work done on this particular piece of legislation was commenced when I was Minister. And the reason was that it is important that we take action and take action quickly, because as we delay action, it means that we're going to have to face even more drastic cuts down the road. And I represent a constituency that has been has had a greater impact in terms of climate than most other constituencies across the country. Yes, there's a focus in relation to the peat-fired power stations in the Midlands, particularly Lanesborough and Shannon Bridge, and the impact from an employment perspective. But also, the vast majority of the 169 families that looked for voluntary home relocation happen to be either in my constituency or adjoining my constituency. Many of those are homes where they have lived for generations in those particular homesteads and are now forced out because of the changing climatic conditions that we have in this country. The same in relation to farmyard relocations. And as I said here at second stage in relation to this legislation, I gave the example of how slow policy is actually being implemented. The decision was taken in January 2018 to stop putting any further fossil fuel buses onto our road within our public transport service. The very first double-decker electric bus will not be on our streets of this city until January 2023, 5 years after it was first proposed. Many of the speakers here this evening spoke about the issue of data centres. 3.5 years ago, this was debated at Cabinet and a policy decision taken to actually restrict the number of data centres that were being developed here in this country. And yet, here we are 3.5 years later, the regulator is only now saying that we must begin to put the brakes on this. So I understand the frustrations that are there. By minister after minister, by government after government that wants to make a real difference in relation to this. And the levers are not there at the moment to do that. And we do need this legislation so that we have a long-term sustainable planet here. And Minister, as you know, during committee stage of this bill, where I attended all 7 of the sessions that took place and debated each one of the amendments that I put forward. And as you will agree, Minister, none of my amendments would actually water down the impact of this legislation, but I had 2 concerns. And one is that the legislation should reflect, as has been recommended by the Climate Change Advisory Council, that there should be separate targets set for agricultural methane, biogenic methane, and I believe that it is a weakness in this legislation that that recommendation, clear recommendation of the Climate Change Advisory Council is not reflected in it. The other issue, Minister, is that I believe that the sectoral targets should be debated and approved by Dáil Éireann. And I think it is wrong that that isn't happening, because unless we have a full and open public debate and a responsible debate here in this chamber, I don't think we're going to get the buy-in from the public. And if we don't get the buy-in from the public, then we are going to be in a position that we will not achieve the targets. We will not be able to implement the measures that need to be implemented and need to be implemented as quickly as possible. So I'm not going to oppose the passage of this new legislation, But as I said to you at committee stage, Minister, I would ask you to consider very carefully the two sets of amendments that I have put forward, which I believe would actually strengthen the implementation of this legislation, the ability to deliver this legislation, but provide that just and fair transition to every single community around the country. Let them be part of that transition. Let them work with government departments and agencies to actually deliver on that. And I fear, the way this legislation is drafted, that this will come back to bite you. So I will, Minister, give you the opportunity in the autumn, if you don't accept my amendments here tonight, I will give you the opportunity to consider them again, because I'll bring forward an amending piece of legislation that will actually reflect those amendments. And I would hope that if you don't accept the amendments here tonight, if you don't accept them in the Shannon next week, that you will, when we come back in the autumn, accept them, because I think they are in the interests of the proper delivery, the fair delivery of what needs to be and must be a just transition that brings our citizens, our people, with us along that journey, and not have the type of adversarial debate that we have seen here tonight. Thank you.